London, 1856. The chandeliers in Westmoreland Hall blazed with golden light, scattering it across the swirling silks and perfectly tailored tailcoats below. A delightful cacophony of violin music and bright laughter filled the air as couples swept across the gleaming dance floor. Standing near the refreshment table, a lone figure in the midst of the crowd, was the Earl of Ellington, Oliver Enfield. Once London's most eligible bachelor, the Earl now stood conspicuously apart, his left profile meticulously turned toward the wall, the harsh scar slashing from his temple down to his jaw, a brutal reminder of the carriage accident that stole his wife 3 years before, had transformed him from society's darling into its shunned outcast. "I do believe you've managed to frighten away half the debutantes with that scowl, my friend," Lord Pamuk observed, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. Oliver accepted a glass without turning his face. Good. I've no interest in their poorly disguised horror. You can't hide forever, Oliver. Life goes on even after tragedy. Does it? Oliver's voice was edged with steel. Look around you, Thomas. Not a single lady has approached me all evening. No mother would willingly sacrifice her daughter to dance with the monster of Mayfair. Self-pity doesn't become you, Lord Pamuk said, his tone softening. Elizabeth wouldn't have wanted this. Elizabeth is dead, Oliver replied, his voice like ice. And with her died any notion that I belong in these rooms. As his friend walked away, Oliver drained his glass, the bitter truth sinking into his chest like a stone. In a world that worshipped beauty and perfection, his disfigurement had rendered him invisible. He'd only come tonight because his sister had begged him, promised that society's memory was short. She was wrong. Beauty might fade, but ugliness, true ugliness, was unforgettable. Oliver set down his empty glass, ready to escape, when a sudden commotion at the entrance seized everyone's attention. A woman had entered, dressed from head to toe in white, her gown completely unadorned by the colorful embellishments that bedecked the other ladies. Her chestnut hair was swept up in a simple, yet undeniably elegant style, decorated only with small pearl pins that caught the light. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. "Who is she?" someone whispered nearby. "Lady Howard's young cousin from Hampshire, I believe," came the reply. "Miss Hope Valeray. They say her father left her nothing but debts and a good name." Oliver watched as the young woman moved through the room with an uncharacteristic grace. Unlike the other women who traveled in protective little packs, Miss Valeray stood alone, her chin raised in quiet determination rather than arrogance. There was something in her demeanor, a certain seriousness, that caught Oliver's eye. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the room. Oliver braced himself for the standard reaction. The quick look away, the uncomfortable shifting that betrayed disgust. Instead, Miss Valeray's gaze remained steady, assessing him with neither pity nor revulsion. Then, shockingly, she smiled. A small, private gesture that seemed to acknowledge something unspoken between them, something Oliver couldn't quite define. Before he could even begin to process this unusual interaction, the orchestra began a new waltz, and the crowd surged forward. When Oliver looked again, Miss Valeray had vanished into the sea of dancers, leaving him with a deeply unsettling feeling that something significant had just happened. Later that evening, Oliver sought refuge from the relentless scrutiny in the card room. He had just settled into an empty seat at a table when a voice broke through his solitude. "I believe this seat is unoccupied, my lord." Oliver looked up to see Miss Valeray standing before him, her white gown practically glowing in the subdued light. "It is," he replied, surprised. Ladies rarely ventured into the card room, especially unaccompanied ones. "Though I'm not sure your reputation will thank you for joining me here. My reputation has survived worse than a game of whist with an earl," she said, taking the seat across from him. "Besides, I find conversation in the card room infinitely more stimulating than that in the ballroom." Her directness was startling. As she arranged her cards, Oliver studied her more closely. In the softer light, he could see that her features, while pleasing, wouldn't quite qualify her as a great beauty by society standards. Still, there was character in her face, intelligence sparking in her hazel eyes, and a firm resolve in the set of her mouth. "You're staring, my lord," she said without looking up. "Is it my unfashionable dress or my inept card-playing technique that holds your interest?" "Neither," he admitted. "I'm simply not accustomed to being approached so directly. Most ladies prefer to avoid me." "Most ladies are fools," she replied simply. "Your turn, I believe." The game continued, and Oliver found himself engaged in a conversation that was refreshingly free of pretense. He learned that Miss Valeray had come to London after her father's death to live with her cousin, Lady Howard. "And what brings you to tonight's affair?" he asked. Surely not the prospect of winning a few shillings at cards. A shadow passed over her face. "Necessity," she answered after a moment. "My cousin has been kind enough to sponsor my season, though we both know its purpose." "To find a husband," Oliver supplied. "To secure my future," she corrected. "I have no fortune and few prospects. Lady Howard has made it abundantly clear that I must make an advantageous match or accept a position as a governess." Her honesty was astounding. Most young ladies would rather die than admit to fortune hunting. "And have you identified a suitable candidate?" Oliver asked, curious despite himself. Miss Valeray's lips curved into a wry smile. "Not yet. I seem to lack the required skills for the hunt. Cannot simper. I speak my mind far too freely, and I find most eligible gentlemen unbearably dull." "A significant handicap in the marriage market," Oliver observed. "Indeed. What about you, Lord Ellington? What brings you to an event you clearly wish to avoid?" Oliver hesitated, unaccustomed to such straightforward questioning. "My sister believes it's time I stopped hiding in my country estate." "And is it?" There was no judgment in her tone, only genuine curiosity. "I don't know," he admitted. "Society hasn't forgotten my appearance." "Perhaps," she suggested, laying down her cards, "it is not society, but yourself who cannot forget." Oliver stiffened. "You presume a great deal, Miss Valeray." "Forgive me," she said, though her expression remained unapologetic. "I have been told my directness is unsuitable. Another flaw in my character, I'm afraid." Before Oliver could respond, Lady Howard appeared in the doorway, her expression thunderous as she spotted her young cousin. "Hope! What on earth are you doing? Come away at once." She swept into the room, nodding curtly to Oliver. "My lord, I apologize if my ward has disturbed you." "On the contrary," Oliver replied. "Miss Valeray has been most refreshing company." Lady Howard looked startled, then suspicious, her gaze darting between them. "Nevertheless, she shouldn't be here. Hope, the Countess of Bellington has been asking for you. Something about her charitable committee." Miss Valeray rose gracefully. "Of course. My lord, thank you for the game." As she turned to leave, she added in a lower voice, "Perhaps you might honor me with a dance at the Pembroke's ball next week. I find I tire of watching from the sidelines." Before he could even form a response, she was gone, leaving Oliver with the distinct impression that he had just been subtly manipulated by a master strategist disguised as a forthright country girl. The following morning, Oliver sat in his study, attempting to focus on his estate accounts, but finding his thoughts drifting back to Miss Hope Valeray time and again. There was something undeniably disarming about her, a quality he couldn't quite put his finger on. Not beauty, though she was certainly pleasing to look at. Not charm, for she lacked the calculated flirtatiousness that defined most débutantes. Honesty, perhaps, or courage. Few people dared to look directly at his scarred face, let alone speak to him without visibly flinching. A knock at the door interrupted his musings. His butler entered, carrying a small envelope on a silver tray. "From Lady Howard's residence, my lord," the butler announced. Oliver broke the seal, his curiosity piqued. Inside was a brief note in an elegant, decisive script. "Lord Ellington. I fear I must apologize for my forthrightness last evening. Lady Howard has informed me that I overstepped the bounds of propriety by engaging you in conversation without a proper introduction. Please attribute my behavior to country manners rather than intentional impropriety. With sincere regards, Hope Valeray, *P.S. I meant what I said about the dance." Oliver found himself smiling for the first time in months. The note was both a perfectly proper apology and a bold reaffirmation of her invitation. Against his better judgment, he reached for his pen. The night of the Pembroke ball arrived, and Oliver found himself doing something he had sworn he'd never do again. Standing at the edge of a ballroom, watching the dancers with something close to anticipation. He had dressed with uncommon care, his valet expressing silent surprise at his master's unusual attention to his appearance. Lord Ellington came a familiar voice. "You came." Oliver turned to find Hope Valeray beside him, radiant in a gown of pale blue that perfectly complemented her fair complexion. Unlike the stark white of their first meeting, tonight's attire suggested Lady Howard had taken a more active role in her cousin's presentation. "Miss Valeray," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "I believe I was commanded to attend." A smile touched her lips. "Invited, my lord. I would never presume to command an earl." "Wouldn't you? I find that difficult to believe." The words came out more teasing than he had intended. Hope's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Perhaps you're right. I've been told I have a regrettable tendency toward impertinence. A quality I find refreshing," Oliver admitted. "Would you care to dance, Miss Valeray? I believe they're starting a waltz." Her smile widened. "I would be delighted, my lord." As Oliver led her onto the dance floor, he became acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed them. It had been years since he had last danced in public. The familiar anxiety rose in his chest, the certainty that everyone was watching, judging, pitying. "My lord," Hope said softly as they took their positions, "you seem tense. Is it the dancing that troubles you, or the audience?" Her directness caught him off guard once again. "Both, perhaps. I have not danced since your accident," she finished when he faltered. "Then we shall give them something worth watching." With that, she placed her hand in his, her touch both firm and reassuring. As they began to move with the music, Oliver found himself focusing not on the crowd, but on his partner, on the grace with which she followed his lead, on the quiet confidence in her gaze. "You dance well, Lord Ellington," she observed, "though I suspect you already know that." "I was considered proficient once," he admitted, "before I became an object of fascination for less flattering reasons." "Is that how you see yourself? As an object?" The question was startling in its insight. "Isn't that how society sees me? The scarred Earl, a curiosity to be whispered about behind fans and gloves." Hope's expression softened. "Perhaps some do, but others might see a man who has endured great loss with dignity. A man who continues to navigate a world that values appearances above character." "You speak as though you understand such things," Oliver said, studying her face. "I understand what it means to be judged for circumstances beyond one's control," she replied. "To be valued or not, for what one represents rather than who one is." As they continued to dance, Oliver became aware of something shifting within him. For years, he had believed that his scars had rendered him invisible, untouchable. Yet here was this woman, neither a great beauty nor an heiress, seeing him with a clarity that was both unsettling and exhilarating. The music ended all too soon. As Oliver escorted Hope back to the edge of the ballroom, they were intercepted by Lady Howard, whose tight smile did little to conceal her displeasure. "Hope, darling, the Countess of Merryweather has been asking after you. Lord Ellington, how good of you to attend tonight's festivities." Her tone suggested it was anything but good. "Lady Howard," Oliver acknowledged with a bow. "Your cousin is a delightful dance partner." "How kind of you to say so," Lady Howard replied, her grip on Hope's arm tightening visibly. "I'm afraid I must steal her away. The young Lord Trenham has expressed an interest in an introduction." Hope's expression remained composed, but Oliver caught the fleeting flash of resignation in her eyes before she masked it with a polite smile. "It was a pleasure, Lord Ellington," she said. "Perhaps we might continue our conversation another time." As Lady Howard whisked her away, Oliver was left with the distinct impression that Hope Valeray was being steered towards a more suitable prospect, one without scars or a reputation for reclusiveness. The realization should have brought him relief. Instead, it left him with an unexpected sense of loss. Over the next few weeks, Oliver found himself attending more social gatherings than he had in the previous 3 years combined. At each event, he sought out Hope Valeray, drawn to her uncommon perspective and her refreshing honesty. They danced. They conversed in quiet corners, away from the watchful eyes of the ton. And, gradually, Oliver began to feel something he had thought permanently extinguished. Hope. It was during Lady Whittingham's garden party that everything shifted. Oliver had just located Hope near the rose garden when he overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. "Quite the clever little schemer, isn't she?" came a woman's voice from behind a nearby hedge. "Lady Howard must be beside herself." "Indeed," replied another. "To set her cap at Ellington of all people. Though, I suppose, beggars can't be choosers, and with her lack of fortune, still, to deliberately pursue a man so disfigured, she must be truly desperate. I heard she approached him first. Can you imagine? Though, I suppose, with that face and that empty purse, what other options does she have?" Oliver stood frozen, the words cutting deeper than he would have thought possible. Of course, it all made perfect sense now. Hope's interest in him had seemed too good to be true. Because it was. She wasn't seeing past his scars. She was seeing through them to his title, his wealth. The one person he had allowed himself to trust was playing the oldest game in society. He turned away, his chest tight with a familiar ache. How foolish he had been to believe that anyone could look at him and see anything but a means to an end. "Lord Ellington?" Hope's voice called from behind him. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Oliver turned slowly, his expression carefully blank. "Miss Valeray, I was just leaving." Her smile faltered at his tone. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," he replied coldly. "I've simply realized I have pressing business elsewhere." "Oh." The single syllable carried a weight of disappointment. "I had hoped we might walk through the gardens. Lady Howard is occupied with the Duchess of Stratham, and I find myself temporarily free from supervision." "I'm sure you can find another gentleman willing to escort you," Oliver said, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Perhaps one whose title might better serve your purposes." Hope stepped back as if struck. "I beg your pardon? There's no need for pretense, Miss Valeray. I understand perfectly. A lady in your position must be practical in her pursuits." Color drained from her face. "What exactly are you implying, my lord?" "Only that your interest in me makes perfect sense when one considers the alternatives. A scarred Earl is still an Earl, after all." For a moment, Hope stared at him in stunned silence. Then, to his surprise, anger flashed in her eyes. "I see," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "You believe I have been cultivating your acquaintance out of mercenary interest, that I am so desperate for security that I would feign affection for a man I find repulsive." "I said no such thing," Oliver protested, feeling a flicker of shame. "You didn't have to." Her voice trembled slightly. "Your implication was perfectly clear. How convenient it must be, Lord Ellington, to believe that any attention you receive must be motivated by something other than genuine regard. It saves you the trouble of having to risk your heart again, doesn't it?" Oliver felt as though she had physically struck him. "You know nothing of my heart, don't I? I know it's guarded by walls so high that you can't imagine anyone scaling them without ulterior motives. I know you wear your scar like armor, daring the world to look past it while simultaneously refusing to believe anyone who does." Her words hit him with devastating accuracy. Before he could even form a response, Lady Howard appeared at Hope's side. "There you are, Hope. Lord Trenham has been asking for you." She glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" Hope straightened her shoulders, her composure returning like a mask snapping into place. "Perfectly fine, cousin. Lord Ellington was just explaining that he no longer wishes for my company." With a curtsy that was painfully correct, she added, "Good day, my lord. I wish you joy in your solitude." As she walked away, Oliver felt something precious slipping through his fingers, something he hadn't realized he wanted until it was gone. The following weeks passed in a blur of self-recrimination and regret. Oliver withdrew once more to his country estate, throwing himself into estate management with a fervor that alarmed his staff. Yet no matter how he occupied his days, his nights were haunted by Hope's parting words. I wish you joy in your solitude. The truth was, solitude no longer brought comfort. It merely echoed with the possibilities he had so carelessly destroyed. It was his sister, Lady Margaret, who finally intervened, arriving unannounced at Ellington Hall with determined purpose. You look terrible, she announced as she swept into his study one rainy afternoon. Thank you for that assessment, Oliver replied dryly. To what do I owe the pleasure of this visit? Margaret settled into the chair opposite his desk. Concern for my brother, who has apparently decided to become a hermit once more. I thought we were past this, Oliver. I'm not hiding, he protested. I'm working the estate. The estate has managed perfectly well for generations without you glowering over ledgers day and night. She leaned forward, her expression serious. What happened? You were attending events, dancing, even. I heard whispers about you and that Valeray girl. Then suddenly nothing. Oliver's jaw tightened. Nothing happened. I simply remembered why I preferred country life. Nonsense, Margaret declared. Something happened with Miss Valeray. I saw how you looked at her at the Pembroke ball. Like a man seeing sunlight after years in darkness. A poetic but inaccurate description, Oliver muttered. Is it? Then perhaps you can explain why Miss Valeray has refused multiple offers, including one from Lord Trenham, a match Lady Howard was most eager to secure. Oliver's head snapped up. What? Margaret smiled, satisfied at having captured his full attention. Oh yes, the ton is abuzz with it. She's refused 2 earls and a viscount in the past month. Lady Howard is beside herself. That makes no sense, Oliver said, rising to pace the room. Why would she refuse such advantageous matches? Her situation is precarious. Yes, Margaret finished for him, which makes her refusals all the more intriguing. Some say she's holding out for a duke. Others suggest she's planning to become a governess rather than marry without affection. Oliver stopped pacing, the word hanging in the air, affection. Apparently, she told Lady Howard that she would rather earn her bread teaching other people's children than sell herself to a man she cannot respect. Margaret studied her brother's face. Rather principled for a fortune hunter, wouldn't you say? The implication was clear. Oliver sank back into his chair, the full weight of his misjudgment settling over him. I've been a fool, he said quietly. Yes, you have, Margaret agreed. The question is, what do you intend to do about it? 2 days later, Oliver found himself standing in Lady Howard's drawing room, his heart pounding with an anxiety he had not felt since his youth. He had come without invitation or announcement, armed only with determination and a fragile hope. Lord Ellington, Lady Howard said as she entered, her surprise evident. This is unexpected. Forgive the intrusion, Lady Howard. I was hoping to speak with Miss Valeray. Lady Howard's expression cooled. I'm afraid that won't be possible. My cousin is no longer residing with me. No longer? Oliver felt his stomach drop. Where has she gone? She has accepted a position as governess to the Earl of Wexford's children. Lady Howard replied, her disapproval clear. Despite my best efforts to secure her a respectable match, Hope chose to throw away her prospects. She departed for Wexfordshire yesterday morning. Oliver struggled to maintain his composure. I see. Might I inquire as to the exact address? I have a matter of importance to discuss with her. Lady Howard regarded him with thinly veiled suspicion. I fail to see what business an earl could have with a governess, my lord, unless, her eyes narrowed. If your intentions are dishonorable. They are nothing of the sort, Oliver interrupted, his voice firm. I believe I have wronged Miss Valeray, and I wish to make amends. After a moment's consideration, Lady Howard sighed. Wexford Manor, near the village of Amberley, though I doubt the Earl will appreciate an unexpected visitor disrupting his household. Thank you, Lady Howard, Oliver bowed. I promise my intentions toward your cousin are entirely honorable. As he turned to leave, Lady Howard added, Lord Ellington, Hope is a singular young woman. Unconventional, perhaps, but with a true heart. Whatever passed between you, I hope you will remember that. It was as close to a blessing as he was likely to receive. The journey to Wexfordshire took nearly 2 days, each mile increasing Oliver's determination and anxiety in equal measure. What if Hope refused to see him? What if she had already moved on? Her heart hardened against him. The questions plagued him, yet he pressed on, driven by the need to at least try to right his wrong. Wexford Manor came into view on the afternoon of the second day, a handsome stone building surrounded by well-kept gardens. As Oliver's carriage approached the main entrance, he spotted a familiar figure seated on a garden bench beneath an ancient oak tree, a book open in her lap. Hope looked different in her governess attire, the simple gray dress and white collar a stark contrast to the gowns she had worn in London. Yet there was a serenity about her that had been absent amidst the glitter of society. Oliver instructed his driver to stop, then descended from the carriage. Hope looked up at the sound of approaching footsteps, her expression transforming from concentration to shock as she recognized him. "Lord Ellington," she said, rising quickly. "What on earth are you doing here?" Oliver paused several paces away, suddenly uncertain. "I came to speak with you, to apologize." Hope glanced toward the house, then back at him. "This is highly improper. I am employed here now." "I know. Lady Howard told me." He took a careful step closer. "Hope, Miss Valeray, I have behaved abominably. I allowed my past, and my insecurities, to poison something precious." Hope's expression remained guarded. "You made your opinion of me quite clear, my lord. I am a fortune hunter, desperate enough." "I was so wrong," Oliver said simply, admitting his misjudgment in wanting a scar for his title. "Terribly wrong. I listened to the gossip, cruel and thoughtless, and let it confirm my worst fears. I couldn't believe that someone like you could see past this," he said, gesturing to his scar. "Someone like me?" Hope repeated. "You mean someone poor and desperate?" "Someone genuine," he corrected gently. "Someone brave enough to speak her mind and kind enough to see beyond appearances. I didn't believe such a person existed. Or maybe I didn't believe I deserved to find her." Hope's posture softened a little. "Why are you here, Lord Ellington? What do you want from me?" "A chance," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A chance to prove that I've learned from my mistake. To show you that I truly see you, as the remarkable woman you are." "And how do you propose to do that?" she asked, though a flicker of something like hope, cautious but present, mirrored his own in her eyes. "By asking you to marry me," Oliver replied, stepping forward to take her hands in his. "Not because either of us needs the alliance, but because I have never felt more alive than when I am with you. Because you challenged me to step out of the shadows and back into life. Because I love you, Hope Valeray, with all my scarred and imperfect heart." Hope's eyes widened, surprised. "You love me with a depth that terrifies me," he confessed. "I tried to protect myself by pushing you away, only to discover that life without you is no life at all." Tears welled up in Hope's eyes. "You hurt me deeply, Oliver." "I know," he said softly, full of remorse. "And I will spend a lifetime making it up to you if you'll let me." "A lifetime is a very long time," she said, though a smile was starting to tug at the corners of her lips. "Not nearly long enough to show you how much I cherish you," Oliver replied, his voice full of heartfelt sincerity. He knelt before her, not caring about the garden dirt staining his expensive trousers. "Hope Valeray, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Will you help me build a life where neither of us is judged by circumstance, but valued for who we truly are?" Hope looked down at him, her face glowing with a happiness that completely took his breath away. "Yes, Oliver, I will marry you. Not for your title or your wealth, but for the man who had the courage to come find me and ask for a second chance." As Oliver stood up and pulled her close into his arms, he marveled at the journey that had led them to this incredible moment. His scars, which had once been a wall that kept him separate from the world, had become the very reason he found a woman who could see past the surface to the genuine heart underneath. "I love you," he whispered against her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "My angel in white." Hope smiled up at him, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I'm wearing gray now, my lord. In my mind, you'll always be that vision in white who dared to truly look at me when no one else would." Their lips met in a kiss that held the promise of healing, forgiveness, and a future that neither of them had dared to even dream of. And in that moment, Oliver knew with absolute certainty that his scars, both the ones you could see and the ones hidden deep inside, had finally begun to heal. A year later, the Earl and Countess of Ellington held their first ball since getting married. High society had been both completely scandalized and utterly fascinated by the unlikely match between the scarred Earl and the penniless governess. But as the couple greeted their guests, even the most cold-hearted gossips were quieted by the obvious and undeniable happiness that shone from both of them. "Nervous?" Hope asked, gently squeezing her husband's hand as they got ready to start the dancing. Oliver smiled down at her, his face relaxed and open in a way it hadn't been in years. "Not in the slightest. Not with you by my side." As they moved gracefully across the dance floor, other couples joined them, and the ballroom filled up with life, laughter, and music. Oliver no longer tried to hide his face or turn away from people's gazes. His scar was still there, of course, but it didn't define who he was anymore. "What are you thinking about?" Hope asked as they twirled through the steps of the waltz. "That I am the luckiest man alive," he replied, his voice full of love and gratitude. "That every day with you teaches me something new about what courage and love really mean. Even when I argue with you about those estate improvements." She teased playfully. "Especially then," he laughed, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Your stubborn determination is one of the things I love most about you." As the music swelled all around them, Oliver thought back on the difficult journey that had brought him out of darkness and into the light. He had once been convinced that his scars made him untouchable and unlovable. Now he finally understood that true healing didn't come from trying to hide your wounds, but from finding someone brave enough to touch them with tenderness and acceptance. Hope had been that person for him, his angel in white, who had shown him that love wasn't about being perfect, but about truly seeing and being seen, scars and all.